All right, so this will be the first meeting, January 2021. Can't believe it's 2021 already. Charlotte area SharePoint user group. Welcome everybody. My name is Andy. I'm going to be presenter, the producer, and basically jack of all trades here today. Want to say thanks everybody for being here as we kick off a new year. We got some really cool announcements. First off, I'm super excited about tonight's topic, SharePoint Online Modernization. This is something that I'm personally really passionate about because there's some really cool stuff that you can do with SharePoint Online now, and this is not the SharePoint that we've had before. It's definitely significantly better than what we've used before. So we're going to talk about some really cool stuff there. But I just want to give you a heads up. We've already scheduled our next 2 meetings. So we've already got February and March on the calendar, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce those events now. So coming up February 18th, we are lucky to have former Microsoft MVP, current Microsoft employee, April Dunham, speaking, and she's going to be doing a talk on SharePoint Online and Microsoft List formatting. A week or so ago, Kelly actually emailed me and he's like, hey, have you seen the new formatting options for SharePoint List? And I knew exactly what he was talking about. There's a feature that you can now customize the layout of a SharePoint list, which is actually pretty cool. I'm going to just quickly show you that. So like if you go into like a SharePoint, modern SharePoint site, and you work with the list, there's an option to format. You'll see configure layout. And when you do that, you're able to work with the header, the body, and the footer. And using JSON, our favorite client-side coding, you can customize the layout of the form. Now, this is like a secret release. So like when Kelly emailed me about this, I went digging. I could not find any official announcement on this anywhere. I still don't know if there's one out there. But I saw April did a YouTube video on this a week ago. So for anybody who's interested, I'll pass you the link for the YouTube video. But April did a YouTube video on it, and also another friend of ours in the community, Reza Durrani, has also done a video on it. And I thought that was like super cool. That there are already a few of us out there taking interest in it. So I reached out to April last night, and she agreed to present on our February event. We're calling this hot off the press, SharePoint Online and Microsoft List formatting. I'm really excited for it. I know there's going to be some really cool things there. She's going to do a little bit of the list layout, header, body, and footer formatting, but she's also going to talk about working with some of the column and view formatting as well. If you haven't seen April do a talk on this, she's a rock star. It's going to be a really good talk. So don't miss out on this one. She spoke at our SharePoint Super SharePoint Saturday back in December of 2019. She flew in from San Francisco to deliver that, and then flew back out to San Francisco to go and record a whole bunch of LinkedIn learning videos. So she's definitely been to the Carolinas before, but we're really looking forward to this talk. So that'll be on Thursday, February 18th, and normal time, 5:30 to 6:30. Also, new events coming up. We are also super lucky to have another friend of ours from the community, Sarah Hasse. Sarah's going to be doing a talk on women in technology. Sarah's a Microsoft MVP. She's pretty much the expert's expert. When it comes to user adoption, she's the queen. But she's going to be talking about women in tech. We're going to do this one on March 18th, Thursday, March 18th, 5 to 6:30. If you've never seen Sarah talk, you're in for a treat. She's a superstar in the community, and this is going to be a topic that we've had a lot of requests for. So we're really looking forward to having Sarah present for us on this event. So definitely don't miss out on that one. Now, as far as registration, these are on our Meetup page, so feel free to go ahead and register, get on board for those talks. Those are going to be really awesome. And as always, we're going to record the sessions. We will make those available on our YouTube channel. If you haven't gone to our YouTube channel, we do have a YouTube channel out there. It's the Charlotte Area SharePoint User Group. I'll make this link available to all of those who are joining in remote. But definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to grow our community. We know not everybody can be here when we're live and broadcasting. So we do record the content and we make that available. So you'll find it on our YouTube channel. And we're going to continue to add content there, presentations, one-off topics as well. Speaking of the YouTube channel, I don't know if you know, but a lot of our members actually have some growing communities inside of there. Daniel Christian, Kirshna, myself, we all have YouTube channels out there. So be sure to join in those. Also, like April, she has a pretty awesome YouTube. Hold on. ShutUpMonday.com. But if you haven't seen April's channel, subscribe to that one as well. I mean, she's got almost 9,000 subscribers out there. She's got tons of videos. It's a great learning resource. Taking advantage of that content. So outside of that, I just want to kind of give you heads up. We've the organizers, we've been talking a little bit about how we kind of structure the meetings, and we're going to try moving forward to alternate meeting times. On even number months, we're going to try to host meetings around noon, and then on odd number months, we're going to try and host meetings in the evening. We're still going to be the third Thursday of the month. But we just want to give everybody in the community an opportunity to participate in our events. And we know not everybody can make it in the evening, so we're kind of rotating around a little bit. We're going to kick the tires on that for a couple of months. Your feedback is definitely welcome as far as how the timing is working out and whether that kind of fits within like your lunch hour, your work schedule, and whatnot. We do this for the community though, so we're not locked into it. It's going to be whatever the community needs. We're going to try to go with that. We were going to try and start that in February, but unfortunately April's schedule only allowed her to speak in the evening, so we won't do the first afternoon noonish event until probably April. So we'll keep you informed on that. And again, we post everything through through Meetup, so we'll definitely keep you informed of that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive into tonight's topic, and I'm going to try and give you as much of a brain dump as I can, because there's a lot of information here to talk about, and I probably need more than an hour and a half to go through it. So this is going to be SharePoint Online Modernization. For those of you that know me, hi, welcome back. And for those of you that don't know me, hi, my name's Andy. I'm one of the organizers here for the Charlotte Area SharePoint User Group. I've been involved with the group now going on, 7 years, I think. I got involved around 2014, so I'm going on 7 years being organizer and kind of helping out with the group. I'm from here in the Charlotte area. I run my own company called Upskill Tech. I'm an enterprise collaboration specialist, mainly doing training, coaching, and consulting around Microsoft 365 technologies, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, the Power Platform. Been with C Prime Learning, formerly ASPE Training, since 2011. Just hit 10 years with them as a trainer, senior courseware developer, coach, and consultant. So if you have questions about training, that's me. That's what I do. I help organize not only the events here monthly, but also the SharePoint Saturday events that we have. So feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Andy Huneycutt. You'll find me on LinkedIn as William Huneycutt. I'm William Andrew. I go by Andy. And then you'll also find me on YouTube. Got 2 channels out there, my Upskill Tech channel, and then I have my Andy channel as well. So that's more information than you probably need to know about me. All right, so tonight, what are we going to talk about? Well, many people over the last couple of years have been migrating into SharePoint Online. We're migrating into the cloud. And going back just a few years ago, May the 4th, there was a big event that the SharePoint team held, and they talked about a lot of changes that were going to be happening to SharePoint moving forward. And that schedule has accelerated over the last couple of years. Part of 2020, the global pandemic, also added to that acceleration. But when you migrate into SharePoint Online, it's not a lift and shift. If you take what you had on premises and you just drop that in the cloud, it will work, but you're going to miss out on a lot of content, a lot of features, a lot of things that can benefit you and your end users. When I think about SharePoint Online, I think about the things that power users have done, the things that we speak about in user groups going back, the last 10, maybe even 15 years. I think about the people in the community that have built these really amazing solutions using things like content types and enterprise content management and custom workflow with tools like SharePoint Designer. I think about the things that they built with form solutions and even starting to dabble in a little bit of code. And we've seen a significant shift in SharePoint Online where you don't have to be that super duper power user in order to build really cool things in SharePoint and save yourself some time and effort and be a little bit more productive. SharePoint has gotten a lot smarter over the last couple of years. Now, power users definitely still have a place in this field, but a lot of these things that we would build are now more kind of out of the box solutions. So when you're moving into SharePoint Online, one of the things you're going to notice right away is that it's, again, not just a lift and shift. You need to reconsider things such as what kind of site templates that you're using, how you build your architecture, like site collections and subsites. You also need to put consideration into the user interface. You're going to find that SharePoint Online supports a modern user interface. And some elements of SharePoint Online are going to be completely modern. Other elements are going to be classic, but you have some control over that. We're going to talk about a little bit of that today. You're also going to find that some of the legacy apps, the things that we've worked with, like lists and libraries, have been updated or in some places replaced or supplanted with tools from Microsoft 365, other applications in that suite. One of the things Microsoft has always touted is the integration of Office and SharePoint. Well, now you need to think about the integration of Office 365, Microsoft 365, and SharePoint. It's much more integrated than it's ever been before. And even to extend that even further, taking that experience and moving it into Microsoft Teams. Teams is now 115 million plus daily average users, which is significant growth. That's 100 million users over the course of last year alone. So Teams is becoming a big part of how we interact with Microsoft 365. And in turn, it's having an effect on how we actually work with SharePoint. So if you're just planning on lifting that on-premises SharePoint deployment you have and just dropping it in the cloud and calling it a day, got news for you. You're going to be missing out on a whole lot if you do that. And you're going to find a lot of frustration from your end users. So in this session, the things that I want to talk about specifically are sites. You need to know about the sites that are there, legacy sites, how they fit into the SharePoint Online story, but also how to work with things like the new site templates that Microsoft provides. And then you need to think about things about or how things such as Microsoft 365 groups and how Microsoft Teams fit into the story. You also need to think about your architecture, flattening out site collections, and working with tools like hub sites. We're going to talk about how you can transform some of your legacy sites. Some things end users can do, some things you might need an admin to do. I'm going to walk through a couple of those features here today. We're going to talk about how to take a team site, little t, and groupify, connect it to a Microsoft 365 group, and then teamify, connect it to a Microsoft team, and maybe even hubify and connect it to a hub and build out an architecture around that. I'm going to go into some PowerShell. So for those of you who haven't seen it, this will be fun introduction for some of you, but I'm going to show you some PowerShell scripting that can simplify switching site templates, but also setting home pages and updating and modernizing home pages, setting sites as communication sites, connecting to the hub, and some other cool features there. Time permitting, we're going to kind of fill in some of the gaps with how permissions are going to be affected with some of what we're going to be doing inside of here. SharePoint on premises, you're working with the SharePoint groups, permission levels, and then permissions and connecting into like your Active Directory and pulling in users and security groups. Well, that story gets extended in SharePoint Online through Microsoft 365 groups. It connects a membership service to your SharePoint site and gives you the ability to extend permissions into other apps in the Microsoft Office 365 suite. We'll talk a little bit about some changes with SharePoint List and Microsoft List. Microsoft List is kind of a new first-class citizen for creating lists that allows you to create a list in SharePoint, but also to be able to create a list that works inside of OneDrive. And then we're going to talk about SharePoint home sites, SharePoint as your company intranet, and how that's going to fit into the Microsoft Teams story. So pretty ambitious. Let's go. All right, first things first, SharePoint sites. So when you move into the cloud, the legacy sites that you've worked with are still going to be there. I've got an example here on the slide that I just want to point out. This is a legacy site. It's got the 2013 look and feel. When you shift into SharePoint Online, those are still going to be available. You're still going to be able to work with those kinds of sites. But there are essentially two site templates that we work with in SharePoint Online. There's the team site template, but then there's also a communication site. And a communication site can be extended into something called a home site. These sites are actually working with the modern user interface. The difference between the legacy sites and the modern user interface is really about devices. These modern sites are responsive. They work on any device, whether you're on a small format like a mobile phone or a tablet, a netbook, or whether you're on, large laptop, or some of you out there have the 49-inch curved monitors. They'll work on those as well. So it's about responsive site design. Also, those sites, they're built on the new site page template, and the site page template is an update to kind of the core framework for displaying web parts and information in your SharePoint sites. So whenever you move into the cloud, one of the first things that you'll actually see is your legacy sites are still going to be there. So this is a legacy site in my farm. Your legacy sites are still going to be there. The home pages, the wiki pages and the web part pages you worked with previously are still going to be there. But right away, you're going to notice something. When you move to a document library, the user experience is going to switch into the modern experience. So lists and libraries are going to go into modern, whereas you might have pages that are stuck in that legacy format. So that causes confusion within users. So that's something you need to address, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a little bit. But I just want to point out those sites do work, but even though they look classic, there are modern elements. The lists and libraries are going to default to modern inside of there with a couple of exceptions. Now, when you go to create new sites, you're going to be using the new modern templates, the team site or a communication site or an Office 365 group site. So just breaking that down a little bit, the classic site templates, all of these are still technically supported. They can be provisioned as subsites within a site collection, and they can also be provisioned from the admin center as the top level of a brand new site collection. But there's a little bit of extra work you got to do to actually provision one of those from the admin center. And I'll just quickly show you that. So like if I go into my my admin center, like I can create new sites here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to choose the create option. And team site and communication site use the new user interface. But then down here, if I do other options, this is going to allow me to pick more templates. And some of these are legacy templates. In fact, if I choose the more template option, that's actually going to take me into kind of the legacy admin center, and it's going to allow me to provision one of the old site templates. So those are still technically available in SharePoint Online. Same kind of look and feel that we've worked with previously. But I don't recommend that you do that. I recommend that you take advantage of the new sites and work with that. Now you can migrate these in, and I'm going to show you some tools to update those in just a bit. So classic site templates still supported, but again, the list and libraries are modern. Now they're going to still work with the classic SharePoint permissions like groups, permission levels, and so forth. But functionality on the list and library part side are going to be updated. All right, so moving forward, the modern experiences. What defines modern? What's Microsoft's definition of modern? Modern means site pages and lists and libraries. So existing collaboration sites, it says they cannot be converted to modern sites with a Microsoft 365 group. We now have some tools to do that through SharePoint Management Shell and through PowerShell. Lists and libraries, Microsoft set that at the farm level like 2 years ago, and so now every list and library is provisioned in a modern experience unless you choose to return to classic or you set the settings on the list and library to return to classic through advanced settings. So you have to manually revert back to that. Don't recommend you do that. And when you create pages, like from the gear icon, you select add a page. The default now is the new site page. That's the new modern page type, but the wiki and the web part pages are still supported. So Microsoft defines modern as modern site pages, modern lists and libraries. So when you're in SharePoint, what you're going to find is, number one, new sites when you provision those, like if you're in the admin center, it's going to default to those modern experiences, the team site or the communication site. And I want to point out the team site here, they are connected to Microsoft 365 groups. So Microsoft 365 groups are going to be extending the SharePoint permissions into other apps in Office 365. So when I go to create from the admin center a new team site, I'm creating something that's connected to other apps. Like I might be creating a SharePoint site and getting a mailbox in Outlook, shared mailbox. I might be getting a shared team calendar, Yammer, not Yammer, I'm sorry, a plan inside of Microsoft Planner and a couple other objects there. So if I don't want that, I have to choose the other options, and I can create just a standalone site. So it's a little bit more work. The other thing that you're going to find is that there is, by default, self-service site creation turned on. And self-service site creation is actually turned on in like 20 places. Users can create SharePoint sites in SharePoint. They can create these in Microsoft Teams. They can create these in Planner. They can create these in Outlook in a couple of different places. So if I'm trying as an admin to turn these off, there's like 20 separate locations that I have to turn this feature off in. It's easier just to allow self-service site creation and to manage it through the admin center than it is to try to turn it off everywhere. So if I'm an admin, that's something I need to strongly consider. And so just to give you an idea of what that looks like, if you're in SharePoint, so like if I'm in SharePoint Home, this shows me all of the different SharePoint sites that I'm associated with. If I go to create a site, I'm going to be able to create a brand new team site connected to the Microsoft 365 group, or I'm going to be able to create a brand new communication site from here. So self-service site creation is definitely on. If I'm in Microsoft Teams and I go to create a new team, it's going to build a SharePoint site on the back end. If I'm in Microsoft Teams and I create a private channel, it's going to create a SharePoint site in the back end, and then again, Outlook and a couple other places. So just know that self-service is definitely the way that Microsoft pushes this. So that brings us into modern sites. A modern site is it's a site that supports a site page or pages, and then modern lists and libraries. It's still built on most of the default permissions that we worked with, SharePoint groups and permission levels. It can be extended though through Microsoft 365 groups, but modern sites are the same core functionality with just an updated user interface. Now, you can take those modern sites and you can groupify them. You can connect them to a Microsoft 365 group. When you do that, you're extending the permission model into Outlook for the shared mailbox and the calendar, into Planner, and into a couple other tools in the Office 365, Microsoft 365 suite. Now, when you connect or you take one of these legacy sites and you connect it to that Office 365 group, you can then teamify it later on if you need. But this gives you tools to not only work with SharePoint, but also to work with the other applications that you might need in Microsoft 365. And just quickly, I'll see if I can show you that. To groupify a site, most of the time you would actually go to the gear icon and you would see an option right over here that says connect to a Microsoft 365 group, especially if the site's like the top level of a site collection. So you would actually see that from there. There's your connect to a new Microsoft 365 group. So that's how easy it is to actually groupify. End users can actually do this if we allow them. All right, so continuing in the modern experience, another thing you're going to find, this has been out for a few years now, but it's communication sites. Communication sites are the replacement or the update for the publishing site that we used to work with. So you would go into some of your like your site settings on previous sites, and you have at the site collection features level the SharePoint server publishing infrastructure, and you could turn that on and you could create publishing sites, and that allows you to kind of create an intranet-based experience inside of SharePoint. Well, now it's recommended that you use communication sites for that. Communication sites allow you to concentrate on the content, and Microsoft handles the presentation for you. Big, bold visual images, stretches from one end of the screen to the other. We don't have to turn on the publishing server infrastructure and some of those heavy-handed legacy tools in order to work with this. These are great for things like publishing and intranet-based scenarios. They use the classic SharePoint permission model. They cannot be connected to a Microsoft 365 group, though. They're basically standalone sites, but they're great for intranet-based scenarios. They work to represent business units, divisions, departments very well. And then extension of that is something that's relatively new. If you haven't seen this, it's called the SharePoint HomeSite. The SharePoint HomeSite is the site that can be the center of your SharePoint intranet. So you can use this as kind of the home of your SharePoint intranet, the main point of communication within your SharePoint farm. It brings together news, events. You can also publish rich media from here. It's registered as a news organizational service. So if I publish a news article here, it pushes it out to everywhere in the farm. So it becomes the authoritative source for information in my SharePoint deployment. And I'll actually show you one of those right now. So this site that I'm actually on, this is actually just a page. This is the old homepage of the site. I have converted this to a communication site, and I've set this as a home site in my tenant, and I did it through PowerShell. So this is the root of my SharePoint tenant. If you look at the URL at the top, it's company.sharepoint.com. So this is the root of my tenant. I converted this to a modern home site, and so now this is the authoritative intranet within my organization. Now it's pretty sparse because I'm a company of one, but this is my home site, and this would be the center of my intranet moving forward. When this site was originally provisioned, it looked like what you saw here. This tenant was provisioned back in 2014. This is what it looked like whenever I bought this tenant. This was the root, and through PowerShell, I was able to modernize, and I was able to convert that to a home site. And home sites have a lot more capabilities than just news and announcements. It also has search that's actually scoped for the entire organization. It's the center of the farm. So you just click on SharePoint up in the you click on SharePoint up in the top left-hand corner right up here, and it's going to take you to that home. And soon you're going to see a left-hand kind of app rail that can connect you back into home. And this site's also going to be connected to Microsoft Teams here Q1 of this year. So you're going to be able to view the home site as a first-class app in Teams along the left-hand navigation. So home sites, you can have one per tenant, and you have to actually set those through PowerShell. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. So going back to that root site, every tenant has a root. A lot of organizations use that to represent maybe their organizational structure, the company, and then departments and business units and divisions. Some organizations don't even know it's there and they kind of ignore it. But take advantage of that root site. If you've had a tenant prior to last year, chances are that root site is built on a classic SharePoint site template. Through PowerShell, we can convert that to a communication site, or we can convert that to a home site. And in both instances, it's actually going to modernize that. Got a link here if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about the modernization experience. Microsoft talks a little bit more about it in that particular doc that they published. So just kind of high level, when you start building this out, you need to think about how you've structured things previously, and you need to kind of reapproach that just a little bit. There's really two main areas that I think about whenever I'm building out these hierarchies. There's collaboration. That's where end users work. That's where work gets done. That's where projects get managed. So we have some sites that are really geared for that. The classic sites that you migrate over are great for collaboration. You can also create a modern team site that's not connected to a Microsoft 365 group, but you can only do that through the admin center or as a subsite within a site collection. End users, though, through self-service site creation, they can create modern team sites connected through to a Microsoft 365 group, and they can also create sites that are connected to Microsoft Teams. They can do that directly from Teams. So they can create their own collaboration spaces in a number of different ways. These two over here on the right, they can create themselves. These two, we would create for them through the admin center. Now, from an intranet capacity, you could use one of these site templates as the center of your intranet, but a lot of times intranet's about publishing. It's about publishing portals. It's about consuming information. So from an intranet scenario, I recommend strongly using communication sites. Communication sites are a great representation of departments, business units, and divisions, and the collaboration can happen through sub-business units and teams and projects and offices through the other site templates. Communication sites are not connected to a Microsoft 365 group. It's the classic permission model supported there, but they give you that great wall-to-wall story kind of billboard. And a communication site could be promoted to a home site through PowerShell. And again, you get one of those per tenant, and that's the great start to your intranet. Now, going back to kind of a legacy way of thinking about this, you've got kind of the publishing side of things, and then you got the collaborative side of the house. This is just a different way to look at the same chart on the previous slide. I think of it as the SharePoint site decision tree. Home sites are kind of the king of the publishing structure, and then communication sites are kind of next in line underneath that to represent those departments, business units, and divisions. Underneath the divider there on the collaborative side, I strongly recommend team sites either connected to Microsoft Teams or to Microsoft 365 groups. That's going to help you to manage projects. That's going to help you to work within smaller teams and smaller business units. Now, we have to address one thing, subsites. We've been trained over the years to create site collections. There's always a top-level site, and then there's subsites underneath that. The thing that you need to know about subsites is they use legacy templates. You can create one or a modern team site underneath as a subsite within a site collection, but it's not going to be connected to a Microsoft 365 group. It cannot be connected to Microsoft Teams. So subsites are going to use more of the classic templates or kind of some of the legacy features, but you do have a modern template there. So just to show you, let me go into like my site collection. So I'm going to go in site contents, and then we will do new, and I'm going to say subsite. And then you see it says team site, no Microsoft 365 group. So it is modern, but it doesn't have a Microsoft 365 group. Those can only be created at the top level of a site collection. There is also Team Site Classic that uses the classic home page, but the list and libraries are modern. Same thing with the project site and the community site. So I don't use any of these anymore. I will occasionally create a subsite as a team site, but Microsoft's view, subsites are an antiquated technology. Now, from the admin center, we can actually turn off the subsite menu, but I can tell you from experience, and my colleagues Kelly and Daniel can tell you, that there are still workarounds to create subsites even when you turn this off inside of your site collections. All right, so moving into SharePoint Online. And don't worry, we're going to get to PowerShell in a minute. Microsoft views the world in SharePoint Online as flat. They are flat earthers. Or flat SharePointers in SharePoint Online. So again, site collections are antiquated or legacy technology. When we get into building out structures in SharePoint Online, you need to rethink how you approach this. Some organizations would create one site collection and then create subsites underneath that that represented branches for each of the different departments, business units, or divisions that they had out there. But those are rigid. They're not flexible. And when we need to reorg or if things need to move, it's a pain. Taking a subsite and promoting it to a top-level site or moving it across site collections typically involves using a migration tool like a ShareGate, for instance. And those tools are really, really good, but you got to get an admin involved to work with that. And if you make changes underneath this, you could impact other sites within the site collection. You'll find that in these types of structures, the things that are going to essentially apply here is you're going to be able to set your permissions at the top level, and then you've got the inheritance model underneath that. And then you're going to be able to work with like features and settings as well. But when you turn on features and settings, those settings might apply to everything within that structure, even if other sites don't actually need it. So creating a model like this, it not only is it inflexible for future use and organizational growth, but it's also going to be subject to maybe some legacy features or features that you don't need. So in Microsoft's view, we need to flatten out as much as possible. You need to take your site collections and you need to flatten them and turn them into as many site collections as you can. Some of my colleagues here, we work at Atrium Health. When we migrated from SharePoint 2010 into the cloud, we took one master site collection with like 3,000 subsites in it and flattened it out into over 600 site collections. And then over the years, this extended, it's almost doubled to like 1,200 site collections. And through Microsoft Teams, it's even greater than that now, but everything is a lot flatter. And that gives us more organizational flexibility to be able to meet the needs of an ever-changing business. Now, in order to flatten, you need a migration tool, or you're going to need to create new top-level sites and then migrate content over manually through like the move to or the copy to command. The migration tool is definitely the best way to go. I recommend ShareGate just because I love it. I use it. It's really good. But there's a number of providers out there that you can use for that. So migration tool is going to simplify this for you. Now, once you start flattening it out, then you're going to be able to embrace something that Microsoft strongly recommends called hubs. Hubs are the new way to organize information. Hubs allow us to organize via navigational links and associations, and those can be changed via drop-down menus. So hubs are going to be a better way to manage this content as you move forward. And hubs offer more flexibility in the future as the needs of your organization change. So in this particular diagram, as we're going back and forth, talent acquisition was associated with the HR hub. But we decided, you know what, talent acquisition needs to be a standalone hub in and of itself, and we need to bring some other sites into it. So through the admin center, we're able to just say, hey, take talent acquisition and hubify it, make it a center hub, and then associate these sites with it. And now this is a more flexible model. So to actually hubify is pretty straightforward. If you're in the admin center, you're able to go in and you're able to select like a top-level site. And when that top-level site is actually selected, you can register that as a hub. So you can make it the center hub for that for your tenant, but you can also take a site and you can associate it with a hub. But from the other side of that equation, we can actually go into a site, and through like the site's information, we're going to be able to do a hub association, and we can put permissions on this, and we can actually run workflow approvals on that as well for users trying to reassociate sites with hubs. So hubs are a very powerful way of organizing sites that offer more flexibility in the future. And to give you an idea of that, let me just show you, so I've got the C Prime training division. Well, this is a communication site, and this is the center hub of my training portal. And if you look at the navigation right up here, you'll see there's this section for hub navigation right up at the top. I still have kind of my quick launch and my top link navigation here, but I've got hub navigation at the top. And so this training division is the center of the hub story, but then I've got a SharePoint training affiliated site. It's associated with the hub, but it's not the center of the hub. It's an associated site, and through the site information, I can actually see that. So it's just listed over there. And if I need to change it to another association, another hub, I can actually do that because I'm permissioned. I can change that association, and that gives me the ability to be able to go in and reorganize very, very quickly, and I don't have to rely on migration tools for that. So hubifying is definitely going to be part of the story you need to consider. And I like to think about hubs as kind of a Ferris wheel. The center of the hub, that's going to represent like a major department or business unit. And the associated sites are the cars. You can get on or off whenever you want, and it gives me the flexibility to kind of rebuild that model as I need. So hubs are going to be a big part of what you do moving forward, but there's work to get there. You need to flatten out those site collections first. You need to determine what's going to be the center hub candidates. Usually the major departments, divisions, and business units are going to be the ones that you want there. And then when you hubify, this is essentially what you get. So when you connect or you declare or register a site as a hub, you get that hub navigation at the top. You can also push out themes and logos. So if I apply a theme to my hub, any site that's associated with it will naturally assume that theme. The hub has a scope. It's scoped from the hub to the affiliated sites and then back. So there's a push and pull of information there. And that also applies to news and even content roll-up. So now we can actually push content across site collections. Cross-site collection publishing was a big ask years ago. Now we actually have that. So hubs are actually going to give you all of those features. And there's even a new permission feature associated with that. So like if I go back to my training division hub and I go and I look at the permissions here, I'm going to see hub permissions. And so I can synchronize the permissions of the center hub with any site that's actually associated with it. So now I can push permissions out across site collections and kind of keep things together like that. So again, registering a hub, we do that through the admin center. So those SharePoint admins will be able to do that, but you'll also be able to do that through PowerShell. I know I'm getting to PowerShell. You'll see that in just a minute. Now, the impact of flattening, a couple things that you need to know about. The benefits are it's a lot easier to maintain versus a site collection with unique permissions underneath it. It's going to allow you to put the features that you need on a site-by-site basis versus putting features on one site and having them automatically push to other sites. It's going to simplify your navigation. You can use hub navigation, and hub navigation can also include drop-downs and mega menus. And it's going to help you to get rid of a whole lot of rot. But when you do this, you have a bunch of concerns you need to be aware of as well. Security, access, and control. Now you've got a bunch of different site collections, and so you might have different permissions across those, but through something like Hub Association, you can streamline it a little bit. Cross-site publishing. Now it's pretty much baked in. Search. Now search is going to be baked in as well, but some of the customization that you might have done in a site collection for some custom search, indexing and so forth, you might lose some of that here. And admins are concerned with self-service site creation. My advice there is just learn to live with it and manage through the admin center, but also through some third-party tools if you need. You can keep track of what's actually happening out there. And then with self-service site creation, there's always sprawl, and that's going to lead to rot as well. And you need to make sure you have your navigation set up in order to operate this effectively. So when you start organizing with hubs, going back to how to approach this, typically the center of a hub is going to represent those bigger business units. And then the affiliated sites are typically going to represent the smaller business units, teams, projects, and offices. So these are going to be more of the collaborative spaces below the fold, and these are going to be more of the publishing spaces above the fold. And to put that in context with the site templates that we've already talked about, communication sites and even team sites can be effective here, whether the team site is connected to a Microsoft 365 group or not. And then below the fold, you're going to see team sites, modern team sites, and even Microsoft Teams sites are going to be more associated sites within that hub structure. So plan it out. Sue Hanley has pretty much the thought leader in this space. She's got a lot of experience with this, a lot of great blogs on it. Understand the type of site templates that you have out there and the use case around them. Hopefully the last 30 minutes have been really helpful for you to kind of wrap your head around that. Don't plan on making just one hub though for your entire intranet. Microsoft said that we could hub a hub. And if you go and you look at some of the PowerShell, there's information out there about hubbing a hub, but it's not live yet. So don't plan on creating one big hub and then hubbing everything into it. It's going to be a mess. Naming conventions. This is a land grab. When you name something, that's a land grab. So if I get self-service site creation on and I'm Joe end user and I'm low on the totem pole and I claim HR is going to come and take my site from me. So naming conventions, you need to have some governance around that. With your hub strategy, know what's publishing based and know what's collaborative and how to associate it. Plan out your navigation. Don't just expect to build the sites and have navigation take care of itself. Plan it out, and that'll help you drive end user adoption. And you don't have to hub everything. Just hub the important parts of your tenant. Don't worry about hubbing everything. Not everything needs to be connected, and things can just be out there and be used. So now, moving into that modern experience. Classic to modern. Now we're really going to get into some fun stuff. So we've already talked about the recommendations. Make sure that you flatten your existing hierarchies. Promote those subsites to top-level sites because we're going to need to be working with some of that. And then know when to groupify. Not everything needs to be connected to a Microsoft 365 group, but know when to groupify. Know when to teamify, and know that when you teamify, that's a one-way street. So when you teamify, when you take an existing SharePoint site and you convert that to a Microsoft team, you are promoting it to a top-level site, you are connecting it to a Microsoft group, and then you're connecting it to a Microsoft team. You cannot undo that. That's a one-way street. So the recommendation there is create a team, test drive it first, and then if you like it, migrate the content over, and then you're done. If you test drive it and you decide you don't like it, don't use it. So kudos to Kelly Jones for that one. That was something that we learned a hard lesson on last year when implementing teams to 15,000 plus users pretty much overnight. And then know when to use a hub to kind of tie everything together. Now, for the rest of the modernization, these are the things that we can work with kind of inside of our sites. So transitioning from classic to modern, we take a site and we convert that to modern. And essentially, the only thing that you're converting to modern are the pages within the site pages. As I've mentioned previously, lists and libraries are already modern unless you revert them back to classic with a couple of exceptions. So when you start modernizing your experience, you're essentially modernizing the pages within your site pages library. Now, the extension of modernization is to take like a site and extend it through a Microsoft 365 group or connect it to a Microsoft team. That's the next level, and that has more of a permission and experience impact. But for the most part, when we talk about modernization, we're talking about site pages. Now, if you connect to that Microsoft 365 group, you are extending the capabilities of that site into those other objects in Microsoft 365, the shared calendar and Outlook and Teams, the SharePoint site, a OneNote notebook and planner. Those are the core things that you get. And as I've shown you, that's actually really easy to do, but you can only do that for a top-level site within a site collection. And then you've got the option to associate it with the Microsoft team. So once you've connected to the Office 365 group, you'll see this little message pop up in the lower left-hand corner, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to connect this to a Microsoft team? Now, this is what cannot be undone. Once you connect to a team, you can't undo it. So that's why I recommend create a new team, test drive it first, and if you decide that works for you, then go ahead and teamify and work from there, or migrate the content over. But as soon as you teamify, you can't undo that. So if users decide that Teams is not for them, then you're going to have to maybe create a site and migrate content back down to it. So an approach that Microsoft recommends is to work with transformational waves. And the waved approach allows you to kind of start small, get some feedback, roll it out to the next group, get some more feedback, learn some lessons along the way, and then you can kind of hit this across the organization. So the first couple of waves are going to be small. And the first couple of waves, you're going to want to use people that are a little bit more IT savvy, people that are a little bit more experienced. Those are going to be the users that you're going to want for the initial waves. Gather feedback, talk to them, what worked and what didn't, and get that feedback and apply that to the next wave. And then you'll go department by department, or business unit by business unit, and you'll roll this out. As you're rolling this out, though, build champions. These are people that are excited about the technology. These are people that can help you to explain the technology to their coworkers. These are the people that can possibly help you to build out a training plan around this. And we found that when you start doing training around this, shorter videos tend to capture attention a lot better. I've done trainings from 5 days down to, I've done 14 days, I've done 5-day trainings, I've done 3-day trainings, I've done full-day workshops, I've done half-day workshops, I've done 1-hour webinars, 30-minute webinars, and then all the way down to 10-minute videos. And we found, and studies are backing this up, that when it comes to the training approach, when we're taking this feedback and trying to pay it forward, that the shorter videos, the 10-minute, the 15-minute videos tend to be more impactful for users, because they can take that, apply that lesson, and then go back, take another small training, and then apply that lesson. And try to do the same thing when you're rolling this out in your transformational waves. Now, as we prioritize, again, the more tech IT savvy groups are going to be the ones that we target first. And then we're going to also prioritize based off of the ease of implementation. So if they're IT savvy and it's an easy target, then we're going to try and get that one early, knock it off, and get it off the list. It's the hard implementation and it's the low willingness for change that are going to be our biggest pushback whenever we try to do something like this. So we're going to have more work to get them to buy in to doing something like this. And most of the time it's going to be, hey, this has to happen. So when we start to do this, take advantage of some of the tools that Microsoft provides. One of those tools is called the Modernization Scanner. The SharePoint PnP team actually put this together, and you need a certain level of rights to actually use this. You need to be a SharePoint administrator in order to use it. But it connects to your tenant, and it runs a scan on all of the site collections and all the sites that you have out there. And it's going to tell you where you are ready to migrate to the cloud and where you might not be ready for it yet. So it's going to give you a report, and it's going to help you to break down what's actually going on within your farm. So I provided there's a link in the PowerPoint if anybody wants that link, I'll give it to you, but it's actually really easy to find. It's aka.ms SPPNP Modernization Scanner. So pretty straightforward. But you're going to have to make sure the scanner has the permissions that it needs to run the scan. You're going to run the scan, and then you're going to go back and review the results from that. So launch it. Make sure the authentication is actually set up, and there's a whole article associated with it from the aka.ms link that's right here. Now, I'm not going to run this in my tenant tonight because it actually takes a while, but when you run the modernization scanner, you're going to get a whole bunch of different results. It's going to tell you what sites are using legacy templates. It's going to show you where you have legacy workflows running. It's going to show you where you have legacy site pages out there. It's going to tell you where you have like legacy lists. There's a lot of information that you're going to be able to gain from that. So these are the things that you can actually narrow it down. You can say, run it on everything. I want to know everything. Or if you're trying to get rid of InfoPath, where's InfoPath being used? Or where are people working with classic workflows? Or where do we have publishing portals running? So you can run it on everything, or you can be granular with what you're going to get the report out of it. And then configure the options for the scanner. You can increase the number of parallel threads that are running, and that can actually run it a little bit faster. You can also choose some of the additional options, like whether or not to use search, or whether or not to generate an Excel report around that. And then you're going to get that data out, and it's going to be in kind of a charted format. So you're going to be able to go back and view the results. It's initially a CSV file, but you can also view the error.csv file, review any errors that are out there, and then you can convert that to your analytics, and you can see what's happening in your farm. So run the modernization scanner. It's free. You just have to have the permissions set up for it in order for it to work appropriately. Now, what can we do once we have that information? How can we start to modernize? So there are a couple things you can do by hand. So before I get into this, let me show you a couple things that you can do by hand. So I've already kind of given you one thing that you can do. So like this site that I'm in here started out as this. This is what it looked like when it was provisioned way back in 2014. So one of the things that I could do is I could actually go in and I could, through my site pages library, I could create a brand new site page. So I actually did that. So I was looking at the home page a moment ago. You can create a brand new modern home page in the site if you want. That's not the modern one. So you can create a modern site page if you need. It's not it either. Maybe I'm in the wrong site collection. But you can create a modern site page. So I'm just going to mock up one real quick. So we'll do new site page. And when you create one of these, like I would give it a name. I would say like this is my home page, and then I would add in like custom web parts just to view, you know, however I want this to be displayed. You can turn comments on or off. That's actually, you can turn that off in the admin center if you need, but you can build out this page and then you can publish the page and the page will be available. And then it's just a matter of once the page is published, then promoting this as the new homepage of the site. And that's actually easily done. So if you go back to the site pages library, you can take a page and you can set that as the home page within that site, and that will start the modernization process. Because keep in mind, lists and libraries in SharePoint Online are already modern. But here's the problem with that particular method. It actually deals with this right here. When we create a site page, it eats up all this space at the top of the page with this header. So this is taking away from usable space, and now I got to scroll up and down on the page to find, you know, information. So like there are a couple of options when I edit the page. So there's a couple of options to make changes here. Like I can make it plain, but it's still going to take up all this space for this header area here. And that's just, it's not clean. So I don't particularly like doing that, but end users can essentially do this. They can set this, create a new home page for the site, and through the site pages library, make it a home page, and then you can use it moving forward. But it's not the best way to do this. But end users can do it, and so it's approachable. So let's take a look at some of what we can do to start to modernize some of the sites that we have out there. Now, one of the other things that you can do with like some of these legacy pages is, depending on the site, you can, where did it go? You can connect to a Microsoft 365 group. So if you take a site and you groupify that site, it will set that with a modern homepage. And when it's groupified with a modern homepage, it will remove kind of that header area, and you won't have to worry about that. But if you groupify, you get those other features, the other components from the Microsoft 365 group. So it won't have that big nasty header on the page, but it will extend your permissions into other Office 365 objects. Now, another thing that users could do is they could actually go in and through just SharePoint Home, they could actually create a new site. And then they could migrate content over. So if they wanted to do like a new communication site, they could actually do that. But sometimes sites are already built, navigation's already there. We don't want to deal with that. So how are we going to address that? Well, that's where PowerShell comes into play. So you can use PowerShell and the SharePoint Online Management Shell. And with the combination of these tools, you're going to be able to run some simple scripts and address all of these issues. And you can even do it in batch if you need. So with the, you can just download this. There's a link here. It's Microsoft English US downloads. Just search for SharePoint Online Management Shell. Download the management shell, run it. It's a PowerShell module, and there's also the PnP SharePoint PowerShell modules as well. But you can run this tool, connect it to your tenant, and then you can use that as a way to start some of the modernization. So just going in, two articles, two things that are going to be really important, and I'm going to give you a link to this, is you've got the PowerShell modules, and I'm going to put this in the chat window for anybody that wants it. All right, so just gave you that link. But you're going to find all of the commands that are supported in the SharePoint Online PowerShell module, and below that, you're also going to find the SharePoint PnP PowerShell modules listed there as well. You can technically run both of these in the same PowerShell instance if you need. I usually run side by side. I just have two different windows running with that same information. But inside of here, you're going to find modules that are going to allow you to update a home page, to convert a site to a communication site, to register a site as a hub, to set a site as a home site within the tenant. And it's simple as running a script like Enable-SPOCommSite and then tell it the name of the site. I mean, it's literally this little bit of information, and you just replace Contoso with the name of your tenant. It's super easy to do once you start working with it. So inside of here, here's a couple of scripts that you're going to need to run. So the first thing you're going to need to do is when you open up the PowerShell module is you're going to need to connect it to your SharePoint instance. So you're going to do Connect-SPOService. You're going to provide a URL, and you're going to connect it to your company-admin.sharepoint.com. Now this means that I have to have admin rights in my tenant. So I have to have like SharePoint global admin rights in order to do this. So this is going to be more of an administrator based tool. Now, inside of here, it's important company-admin.com. So like if we look at mine, my tenant, it's going to be William Huneycutt Consulting. It's not going to be the rest of that. It's just going to be William Huneycutt Consulting -admin.sharepoint.com. So that's how I'm going to connect in. So I'm going to connect to the service first. Now, once I'm connected to the service through PowerShell, I'm going to be able to run all kinds of scripts. One of the things that you can do is a site swap. Now, if you have a root and you want to replace it with maybe another site out there, you can swap it. So we can take the default root and swap it with another root. So there's an invoke site swap. So you're probably wondering, well, how does that actually work? Well, Microsoft thought about that, and there is an invoke site swap here, and it tells you, okay, this is the command. These are the parameters that you can provide with that, and then they give you a couple of different examples. So for example, we're going to invoke site swap. This is the source. So this is the URL for the source. And then, so that's the source is what we want to become the new root. And then over here is the current root and what we want to replace. And then the parameter is to archive the old site. We want to make sure that we keep that that old site out there. And so it just breaks down that particular example. So in this situation, what we're actually doing is we're taking this legacy root site that we had, this one, and we're swapping it. And when we swap it, we can do something like this. We can swap it and turn it into a communication site. So if I had another standalone communication site, now I've swapped that in, and that actually becomes the root of my tenant. And it's just a simple invoke site swap PowerShell commandlet. But there's some other things that you can do. So this just visualizes it. This is what it looked like before I hit the site swap button, and this is what it looked like after I ran it. Now there's, I just did a simple little breakdown of that just in the presentation here. But if you look down here, you can also, there's a number of commands that allow you to set SPOSite and allows you to update properties as well. So if you go back and you look at those PowerShell modules, you'll see there's a whole section in there for set. And so you can do some really interesting things in there. So like there's Set-SPOSite. So this is the site, and these are all the parameters through PowerShell that I can actually update. So you'll see the name, description, logos, all of that stuff can actually be updated in, inside of here. Taking that a step further, we can actually do something called site designs. And site designs are kind of the new templates. And you can create a script around a site design, and you can set the site to include navigational elements, lists, libraries, themes, brandings, and so forth through site designs. And it's just set-SPO.site design. And there's descriptions and examples in here. So it tells you what the parameters are, and then it gives you some specific use case around that. So Set-SPOHomeSite. So if you want to register a home site in your tenant, this is actually how you do that. Now, I've already got a home site set up in my tenant because I ran this command. I pointed the home site at the root of my tenant, William Huneycutt consulting.sharepoint.com, and I set that. And so now this particular site right here, this is actually defined as the home site in my tenant. Now, remember, you get one of these per tenant. When I set it as a home site, it could also modernize it and turn it into a communication site. I ran a communication site script first, and then I did the set home site, and that registers that as the home site. And this that easy to actually do. You can register hub sites. Now you can do hub sites through the admin portal. I've shown you that from the dropdown, but you can also do this through PowerShell, and you can script this, and you can register a bunch of these all at the same time. And then you can set hub sites as well. That sets the information, such as the name, the logo, and the description for the hub site. You can do all that through PowerShell. You can register site collections or hubs as organizational news. So you can have many different org news sites within your tenant through PowerShell. You can register these as organizational news, and they're an authoritative news service inside of the tenant. And then you can even go and get a full listing of like all of your communication sites, all of your hub sites. Just use the get command. And again, in that article that I sent you a link to, you'll just go to the section for get. So like if I say get SPO tenant, that tells me get my tenant and give me all the information there. Or if I say like go and get SPO user, go and get a specific user and show me their information. And I can also point it at specific sites and have it go and pull information down from the site. So get an SPO site. This is what I'm looking for. These are the parameters that I can pull. A couple of examples down at the bottom. So return all my site collections. Return a specific site collection with detailed properties. Return a specific site and tell me who the non-owners are. So the get commands are really helpful inside of there. And then Enable-SPOCommSite. If I have a team site, a legacy site, and I want to convert it to a communication site, this is how I do it. So this is actually a relatively new one. This has only been out for a few months now. But you just point it at the site and you say, turn this into a comm site. And when you connect and you tell it to turn it into a comm site, it will switch that template over and it'll turn it into a comm site. So it'll take a team site that looks like this and turn it into a communication site that looks like this. And it's just as simple as pointing enable-SPO-CommSite at the site and hitting enter. Now, there's also a couple of PnP PowerShell commandlets. So we've been looking at the SharePoint Online Management Shell. Oops. All right, so these commandlets, one second, let me. All right, these commandlets are going to allow us to do some different things. And one of the things that you can actually do here is you can convert things like site pages. So this one's actually really cool. That's how I was able to set some of the site pages and get rid of all that extra white space using this one. So convert to -PnP client-side page, and then take the home page of this site and replace it with a new home page, or replace it with a modern home page, and get rid of that extra white space inside of the site. And then there's the other parameters. The additional parameters allow, like, if you replace that site page, do you want to keep a copy of it, archive it? Do you want to pin to the name of the new one? How do you actually want to go in and do that? How do you want to convert that? I've used this one a bunch. I had like 30 sites that were all legacy. I connected through PnP, pointed at the site, just basically copied this over and over and just changed the name of the site each and every time, and then modernized a bunch of these all in a batch. Kept the legacy pages just for historical purposes, but went ahead and switched everything into that modern view, and it got rid of the extra white space that you see whenever you do this manually by creating a new site page and setting it as the home page. This is how you do it. So PnPPowerShell. So there's a couple of different versions of that. I know some of you are going to want the links to a lot of this. So for those of you that are here tonight, I'll give that to you in the chat window. Here comes the fire hose. So that's out there. You got reference material for that. And then I showed a couple of different scripting examples in the PowerPoint. If anybody wants the PowerPoint, just let me know, and I'll see about getting this information out there for you. So again, just a couple of different little modules in there. Now we're scheduled till 6:30, so we got 3 minutes left. I'm not going to try and cram in this next section in 3 minutes. I'll do this as another presentation. Maybe I'll YouTube it and I'll send a link out to it. But I'll do the other part of this at another time. I don't want to go over the scheduled time. But with that, I hope you've seen some cool things here tonight. I hope you've learned something a little bit different. This is just kind of a, get you interested in what's actually kind of coming down the pipeline. There's some really cool stuff that we can do in SharePoint Online, at least from modernizing the site structure. You don't have to do all of this by hand. There's a lot of things that we can run through PowerShell and really streamline a lot. And if you're interested in seeing some PowerShell specific examples, I might throw some of those up on my YouTube channel. Just let me know. But with that, thanks everybody. I'm gonna open things up now for Q&A, and hope to see you online. Hope to see you at the February meeting with April. I'm gonna stick around now, open it up for Q&A, and yeah, we'll go from there.